Thank you. The next item of business is the members' business debate on motion 18709 in the name of Paul Sweeney on Norway selects the Glasgow-built Type 26 as its next generation frigate. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I would invite those members who wish to speak in the debate to please press the request to speak buttons. And I call on Paul Sweeney to open the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. On Tuesday, I was pleased to return to my old workplace, BAE Systems Naval Ships in Scotstoun, with the newly appointed Defence Procurement Minister, Luke Pollard MP, to celebrate the £10 billion deal to supply at least 5 Type 26 frigates to our Norwegian friends, which has brought with it a wave of optimism to the shipyards on the River Clyde that is in stark contrast to when I worked there a decade ago. And I think I express the will of the whole Parliament in extending our gratitude and thanks to our Norwegian neighbours for their vote of confidence in our shipbuilders and the world's best frigate design. Both the Scottish naval shipyards at Govan, Scotstoun as well as Rosyth now have a formidable order book with an expected 18 frigates in the pipeline, 13 Type 26 vessels for the Royal Navy and Royal Norwegian Navy, and 5 Type 31 frigates for the Royal Navy, with export prospects for the latter including Denmark and Sweden. Glasgow is now at the very heart of the largest surface naval shipbuilding programme in Europe, a programme rivalled only by those in the United States and China. And this isn't just about building ships, it's about building a future. It's about supporting an industry that is Glasgow's largest manufacturing industry and has always been a vital engine in the west of Scotland's economy. Not only will this deal with Norway directly sustain more than 2,000 jobs at the Govan and Scotstoun shipyards, providing a stable workload for the next 15 years, but it will also cascade work to 103 businesses across the shipbuilding supply chain in Scotland, which together support more than 12,000 jobs in this country. Like many Glaswegians, I come from a family with a proud history of working in the Clyde shipyards. My dad, my uncle, my granda all worked in the shipyards, going right back to the building of the QE2 in the 1960s. And I recall the pride of launch days, sitting on my dad's shoulders, looking at these vast ships being launched into the river, the clatter of the drag chains, but that pride in the industry and the achievement of our families being overshadowed by the fear that the ship that my dad was building would be the last. The precarious nature of shipbuilding in the 1990s meant that there was a real sense that every ship might be the last. When my dad eventually lost his job, I saw his purpose ripped away from him and the devastating effect that that had on my own family. That is the source of my motivation to play my own part in reviving Glasgow's shipbuilding industry. And the UK Labour Government shares my ambition for reviving this industry right across Scotland. The £10 billion deal with Norway represents the largest shipbuilding export deal in our country's history, and it will give people right across Scotland the confidence that shipbuilding has a secure future today. Giving young people confidence that a career on the Clyde will be a prosperous and fulfilling one, working in some of the world's most complex engineering projects. And I'm hopeful that the Norway deal will also signal to other countries that Scotland is leading the way with its specialist naval shipbuilding capabilities. Indeed, a US Navy delegation led by their Secretary for the Navy was on a tour of the Clyde shipyards this week, and they were hugely impressed with how far ahead we are in skills development and facilities investment with that confidence of long-term orders. We should now seize this generational opportunity to reposition Scotland as a leading force in world shipbuilding again, leveraging that critical mass of the naval shipbuilding programme to drive commercial shipbuilding growth too. It should be a springboard for growth, not just a hammock where we get complacent. This government's decision to scrap its ridiculous ban on support for naval shipbuilding earlier this month is certainly a welcome first step in grasping the opportunity that this deal with Norway represents to the nation. However, there are still deep concerns within the industry that their new policy still amounts to a shadow ban of defence firms, and industry tells me that greater clarity is needed from the government on their new policy. Whilst the UK Government is backing Scottish shipbuilding, the Scottish Government's outdated, laissez-faire public procurement policies is handing an unfair advantage to state-supported overseas competitors. It is frankly absurd to export Scottish skilled work and jobs to shipyards in Poland and Turkey by awarding them contracts for CalMac ferries rather than Scottish shipyards that can do the job. It leaves one with the impression that the Norwegian government seemed to have more confidence in Scotland's shipbuilding capabilities than this SNP government, and that is the reality, Deputy Presiding Officer. We need a specific shipbuilding strategy for Scotland, and at the heart of that strategy must be a change to Scottish public procurement law to include a mandatory social value weighting in tenders for shipbuilding programmes, ensuring that Scottish ships are more likely to be built in Scotland. Take the current procurement process for the 2 new Freightflex vessels that will serve the Aberdeen to Kirkwall-Lerwick route. 4 shipyards have just been invited to tender for the contract this week, 2 in Turkey, 2 in China. Why is the Scottish Government-owned Ferguson Marine, Babcock and Rosyth or Harland and Wolff not in contention for this £200 million contract? The irony is that the only work keeping the lights on at Ferguson's today is the subcontract steelwork fabrication from BAE Systems for the Type 26 frigates. And even the promised capital investment to improve Ferguson's antiquated shipyard hasn't been invested yet, despite it taking years to install critical equipment like a panel line. While the UK Government's national shipbuilding strategy sets out a minimum 10% social value weighting to be applied to evaluations in all new shipbuilding competitions, the Scottish Government has no equivalent. It only considers quality and price. It means that Scottish firms are often not even bothering to tender for the work, as we've just heard in First Minister's questions, in full knowledge that they cannot compete with the competitive shipbuilding finance provided by state investment banks in Spain, Turkey, Poland and China. I also note that the Minister mentioned size. In fact, if Inchgreen Dry Dock were leased by Ferguson's, it could easily assemble the ship for the Northern Isles project. In the case of the Northern Lighthouse Board's vessel replacement project, which was won by Gondan shipbuilders in Spain, BAE and Ferguson Marine were invited to tender for the contract, but withdrew shortly after being informed that they were amongst the 6 suppliers to be selected for the following reasons. BAE said that a UK-based social value consideration is not being considered as essential in responding to the tender. Ferguson said the Northern Lighthouse Board's stated position on economic and social impact scoring would make no distinction between impacts in the UK and other countries. So we're weighing up apprentices in other foreign countries the same as we are at home. It's crazy. I asked the Scottish Government to accept the generous offer from the UK Government for a legislative consent memorandum to update Scottish public procurement law and introduce a mandatory local industrial social value weighting in all public procurement competitions. There is a real opportunity in Scotland to build on this £10 billion contract with the Norwegians to rejuvenate Scotland as a leading shipbuilding nation. We must remove the financial barriers that impede Scottish shipyards from competing with yards in Turkey, Poland and China with the Scottish National Investment Bank by adding that minimum social value weighting to all tenders. This is personal to me, not political. One of the main reasons I am here in this Parliament is to help Scottish shipbuilding succeed, and I hope the whole Parliament can agree with that endeavour. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Sweeney. We now move to the open debate. Backbench speeches of up to 4 minutes. I call Alistair Allen to be followed by Stephen Kerr. Dr Allen.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. May I firstly thank Paul Sweeney for bringing this motion before Parliament today. As someone known to take an interest in both maritime and Norwegian matters myself, it comes as very welcome news, but no surprise that the Norwegian Government has recognised the talents of BAE Systems in Glasgow to deliver at least 5 Type 26 frigates for the Norwegian Royal Navy. The design of the Type 26 is seen as a successor to previous anti-submarine warships in the NATO fleet and was a platform shared in design by the UK, Australia and Canada. This is the first time, I understand, that this has been done in quite this way since the design of the Tribal-class destroyer in World War II. I visited the company and seen for myself the truly impressive scale of their operation, and I also had the pleasure of meeting some of their many apprentices. As members have indicated, BAE Systems build, or members are, I'm sure, about to indicate, BAE Systems build on a venerable tradition of shipbuilding at their locations in Scotstoun, formerly Yarrows, and Govan, formerly Caverner, Govan Shipbuilders, Upper Clyde Shipbuilders, and before that Fairfields. Given that this latest order is the largest single defence capability investment in Norway's history, this certainly represents a vote of confidence in the company and in the wider Scottish economy. I will, yes.
Paul Sweeney.
Thank the member for giving me. I made an interesting mention of Caverner there, and I think it's important to recognise that the Norwegians actually played a critical role in the late 1980s in rejuvenating and saving Govan Shipyard, and in fact this is a fabulous legacy that it came full circle in this way.
Alistair Allen.
I would very happily acknowledge that point and recognise the part they have, as the member says, played in the Yard's history. Norway and Scotland share, of course, many maritime and historic links, not least since Norway's conspicuously successful independence from Sweden in 1905. Today, the existence of the Sjømannskirken, the Norwegian Seafarers' Church in Aberdeen, is just one of many signs of that continuing connection with Scotland. So the news of the contract was warmly welcomed by the Scottish Government and by the First Minister. I am pleased to see the UK Prime Minister correcting the record on that, albeit without apology after twice claiming otherwise in the House of Commons. In any case, thanks to support from both the Scottish and UK governments into BAE Systems, alongside the hard work of their skilled workforce, I am encouraged at how the shipyard and the Type 26 design are attracting interest overseas. Presiding Officer, this debate is also an opportunity to remind ourselves that the ultimate decision to award this contract was one made by the Government of Norway. It was made on the basis of the yard's excellence rather than on political factors. And it also shows that all large military contracts of this kind operate in an international context. So the Royal Navy's Tide-class tankers were built in South Korea, and some parts for the Royal Navy engines are fabricated there also. And today also serves as a reminder, of course, that Norway, a country of 5 million people in Northern Europe, which is a non-nuclear member of NATO, is perfectly capable of having a first-rate Royal Navy of our own. I will resist the strong temptation to say more than that. But the fact is that BAE's excellence was ultimately what drew the investment, not, as I say, the political environment. And on that we should all agree as a Parliament. And so I wish the company and its workforce, as well as the Armed Forces of Norway, every success for the future.
Thank you, Dr Allen. I now call Stephen Kerr to be followed by David Russell. Mr Kerr.
Welcome. I want to congratulate Paul Sweeney on his motion, and I join him in celebrating what is a landmark moment for Scottish shipbuilding. And I also personally endorse his words about a more level playing field for procurement rules. I would advocate very strongly that we should maximise those Brexit freedoms, and that means redrawing the lines around how we procure in the public space. And there's been a reluctance from government at all levels to properly embrace the opportunity to do exactly what he is advocating in his remarks this afternoon. The £10 billion contract for at least 5 Type 26 frigates to be built for the Royal Norwegian Navy at Govan in Scotland is the largest shipbuilding export deal in Scotland's history, and it does represent a vote of confidence not only in BAE Systems, but in the skills, resilience and ingenuity of the Scottish workforce. And this order was not won by accident. Norway had other options. Designs from France, Germany and the United States were all under consideration, but they chose the British Type 26 because it is world-class, unrivalled in sonar, strike capability and NATO interoperability. This choice is a direct endorsement of Scotland's proud tradition of shipbuilding excellence, and we should acknowledge the policy framework that made this possible. The UK's National Shipbuilding Strategy, launched by the Conservative government in 2017, provided a focus on exports, with the 30-year pipeline giving our yards the ability to expand and compete globally. Norwegian and British vessels will now be built side by side at Janet Harvey Hall. Such work is possible thanks in large measure to the Conservative UK governments that worked hard to ensure BAE Systems in Govan was properly equipped to handle such orders. And the fact that Scotland now holds an order book for 18 frigates and 13 Type 26 vessels is a measure of that foresight. Since 2014, the order books in Scottish shipyards have boasted orders for 25 vessels, 5 offshore patrol vessels, 18 frigates, 2 carriers, more than double what was promised during the independence referendum. Over 2,000 highly skilled jobs at Govan will be directly sustained into the 2030s, and when the wider supply chain of more than 100 Scottish businesses, including 54 SMEs, is considered, the total rises to around 12,000 jobs. The Clyde is now a serious contender for even more work with the building of the Royal Navy's next generation of air defence destroyers. And it's not just about the Clyde. Rosyth too stands on the cusp of further international contracts, with Type 31s already exported to Poland and Indonesia, with the yard poised for building frigates for Denmark and Sweden. The Type 26 is now a truly global combat ship. Canada and Australia are building a further 23 vessels to the same design, and Scottish SMEs are therefore embedded in the global supply chains to support these construction projects for decades to come. Presiding Officer, this is a story of Scottish success on the world stage. Success built on excellence, innovation, and the deep wells of skill that we have in our country, in our workforces. We must give credit to those who had the foresight to invest, and we must ensure that Scotland's two governments, both the UK and Scottish Government, work together to maximise these benefits for the future.
Thank you, Mr Kerr. I now call Davy Russell to be followed by Alexander Stewart. Mr Russell.
Many thanks, Presiding Officer, and to my good friend and colleague Paul Sweeney for bringing this debate to Parliament. Of course, I welcome the news of the £10 billion deal to supply ships to our friend and ally Norway and to our own Royal Navy for securing over 2,000 well-paid jobs. And it secures employment for the next decade and a half, restoring Glasgow's shipyards to the pride of the United Kingdom and Scotland. It is not just about economic windfall here, it's about a show of confidence in the capabilities of our workforce. The Scottish Government must now do the same and show it has the confidence in Scotland's shipbuilding industry by backing it up with comprehensive shipbuilding strategy and placing direct orders of any future ships and ferries, ideally backed by a dynamic, aggressive industrial policy. We are all aware that our NATO allies will be increasing their defence spending substantially over the next decade or so, which presents a major opportunity to our defence industry. With the right industrial strategy and defence contracts, the Scottish Government can embrace this growth area by enabling a suitably funded skills and training programme to rectify any gaps that are there. But also, sectors and industries throughout Scotland are all in the same position. We are quite familiar in this chamber with the lack of specialist tradesmen, technicians, engineers in Scotland. A sturdy and steadfast industrial policy that could link up defence, green energy, house building, to name but a few, and their common need for highly skilled personnel. This would achieve more than a lacklustre approach taken by the Scottish Government at present. Funded training, industrial placements, securely highly paid careers for those involved is the way forward. Additionally, an increased protectionist globalist economy is making sure that Scotland has the skills and political will to build its own ships and infrastructure. The Scottish Government might be happy with Chinese steel, Chinese buses, Turkish boats, Spanish firms running our power and trunk road networks, but when it comes to our workforce, that's not going to cut it anymore. The Scottish Government should allow the UK take the UK Labour Government's lead and embrace a Canadian-style procurement strategy, not just balancing cost and value for money, but ensuring that the partners invest in the local economy, upskill their workers, outsource to Scottish third-party organisations, and generally make sure that the benefit of large-scale procurement is felt at home as much as possible and for as long as possible. Presiding Officer, I would hope that every colleague here would agree with most of what I'm saying. We have the utmost faith in our hard-working, inventive, industrial people of Scotland. After all, we are Team Scotland, we have the resources, we have the players, we just need the manager, i.e. the Scottish Government, to get their act together.
Thank you, Mr Russell. I now call Alexander Stewart to be followed by Katie Clark. Mr Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to be able to contribute to this afternoon's debate, and I thank Paul Sweeney for bringing it to the Chamber today. It goes without saying that £10 billion worth a deal supplying 5 Type 26 frigates from Norway should be welcomed wholeheartedly, and everyone is doing that today in this chamber. The debate is an excellent opportunity to welcome this, but it's also an opportunity to look at the success of the UK defence industry in Scotland. And that has gone from strength to strength, and that needs to be celebrated. We know that about 2,000 jobs at BAE Systems will be supported from this new deal in Glasgow, as well as about 2,000 jobs across the maritime supply chain, with over 100 businesses will benefit directly from this agreement, nearly half of which are small or medium-sized businesses. And that's a real boost to the economy and a shot in the arm. The new deal for the Clyde is a landmark moment for the Scottish shipbuilding industry. It is also a call to action for the Scottish and the UK governments. We now need to see these governments working hand in glove with industry in Scotland to ensure that this fantastic sector can capitalise on the opportunities that lie ahead. These include supporting opportunities from the Clyde, but also opportunities in Babcock, in Rosyth, in my own region of Mid-Scotland and Fife. And we know that they're in the running for the potential for £1 billion of deal for ships from Denmark. The Chief Executive, David Lockwood, said that he's confident but not complacent about the bid. And that follows on from the 5 new E-31 warships for the Royal Navy, which were worth £1.25 billion that were built there. Part of that investment in the Rosyth Yard includes the building of a new assembly hall, which has the capability of ensuring that 2 frigates can be parallel assembled. Now, that's another huge investment that's taking place. And these type of investments are state-of-the-art, presiding officer, and support organisations and structures within Rosyth and across the Clyde. In total, absolutely.
Paul Sweeney.
I thank the member for giving way. He's making a very important point about the capital investment to get the shipyard infrastructure up to scratch, and both the investments in Govan and at Rosyth demonstrate that visionary capacity growth to bring more shipbuilding indoors when Scotland's a very rainy environment. Does he agree that this is needed at Ferguson Marine as well? We need to see the commercial yards invested in to get the facilities up to scratch.
Alexander Stewart.
I thank the member for his intervention, and I think he makes a very valid point. You know, if you are going to create this kind of environment, you need to ensure that there are others that can fulfil and have that capacity within the system to make sure that happens. So, as I've said, this will support thousands of jobs and deliver the opportunity that happens. And you know, this is going to cost about £250 million to build a frigate. Well, that's about the same cost as an SNP are building one single car ferry. So investment of this, it doesn't just happen by itself and happen by chance. We've heard that already. There is a real opportunity for us to ensure that the UK government has worked with, and the Conservative UK government in the past were very much involved in the National Shipbuilding Strategy. So I pay tribute to what they've done, and it needs to be continued. The strategy builds upon what we need to see in the creation of technology and new jobs. And I hope that the current Labour government will continue to support Babcock and others across this landmark institute to ensure that is the case. We also need to see a more positive approach from the SNP government when it comes to realities behind defence sector, because as we know, there's some ideology that happens within this process, and that can cause waves within the sector, and we don't want to see that. So we need to ensure that the Scottish Government are fulfilling that. Presiding officer, these investments are putting Scotland firmly in the centre of global defence industry, and that's securing thousands of jobs for the future. So in conclusion, we have arrived at this point through practical, bold, ambitious investment by government who recognise the importance of the industry. The onus is now on both the Scottish and UK government to show the same organisation and realise what can happen for going forward for the future. And if that can take place, then this continued success will continue. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. And I call Katie Clark.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I congratulate Paul Sweeney for securing this important debate today. The shipbuilding industry is of historic importance to many communities across Scotland and continues to play a significant part in our economy today. The deal secured by the UK Government with Norway to provide at least 5 frigates will provide jobs and continued work for Scotland's shipbuilding industry. This deal follows on from other contracts secured by Scotland's shipyards from the Royal Navy, including at Ferguson Marine, which will be involved in fabricating components for HMS Birmingham. However, there is a clear need for a comprehensive national shipbuilding strategy for Scotland, particularly when we consider the current position that Ferguson finds itself in as the Clyde's last non-naval shipyard. Ferguson employs around 300 highly skilled workers and apprentices and has been a vital part of Scotland's shipbuilding industry for over a century, delivering a third of CalMac's current fleet. The yard is also vital for the local economy in Inverclyde, and continued failure by the Scottish Government to both deliver on the promised investment and help to the yard to secure work is creating uncertainty about the yard's future. Last year, the Scottish Government pledged to invest £14.2 million in modern equipment at Ferguson's, yet only £600,000 has been invested so far, and procurement notices for new machinery have lapsed. I would be grateful if the Minister could provide an update today on when the remaining promised investment will be delivered at Ferguson's. The yard also lost out the CalMac order for 7 small electric ferries earlier this year. This wasn't because of doubts about the quality of the yard's bid, but because its bid was undercut on price. Concerns have been raised that social value was not considered sufficiently in this decision, and indeed in other decisions that have been taking place. In other parts of the UK Government now has placed a minimum 10% social value weighting element into the assessments of bids for shipbuilding contracts, and I support the points made by Paul Sweeney in his speech today. When I raised this point with the Cabinet Secretary last week, she said that social value weighting was already included in current procurement legislation. So I would be grateful for clarity from the Minister on social value being included in procurement and at least matching the 10% minimum that is required in other parts of the UK, because we know that has not been the case in previous processes. I also made the case for direct awards last week, which is lawful for essential infrastructure such as ferries. I understand that the UK Government has written to Scottish ministers about extending UK procurement legislation to Scotland. It would be helpful if the Minister could outline what engagement, if any, is taking place with UK ministers in terms of procurement legislation, the ability to make direct awards and the ability to maximise social value in any procurement policies. As I said last week, I urged the Cabinet Secretary to make a direct award to Ferguson's for the replacement of HMV Lord of the Isles last week. This is a call supported by the workers, by unions, Ferguson Marine itself, businesses and the local community across the west of Scotland. Given such lifeline ferries... The member is concluding. Apologies, I can't take one. So I would ask that the Scottish Government consider making a direct award under Section 45 of the Subsidy Control Act in relation to that specific procurement exercise. But I reiterate the calls in Paul Sweeney's motion for a national shipbuilding strategy in Scotland, which recognise the strategic importance of shipbuilding to this country.
Thank you, Ms Clark. And I now call on Minister Richard Lochhead to respond to the debate. Up to 7 minutes, please, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Can I firstly just say that I do welcome this debate, and I congratulate Paul Sweeney in bringing it forward. We're discussing a very important part of the Scottish economy today, and we're discussing an exciting new chapter in that sector. And of course, Paul Sweeney eloquently outlined the deep heritage of the sector as well. And I often, when I'm talking about Scotland's industrial heritage, talk about how I recall in the beginning of the 20th century, I think that the Glasgow and Clyde shipyards were producing around a third of the world's ocean-going vessels at that time. So it is really exciting to be here in 2025 talking about this new chapter in that story for shipbuilding in Scotland. We do have a proud history in shipbuilding, and of course in terms of manufacturing capability, it's very much at the heart of that as well. As a government, we are very much committed to ensuring that shipbuilding, marine engineering and ship servicing on the Clyde continues to flourish, and that we also continue to support our innovative marine technology companies to grow as well. And much of the focus, of course, in this debate has been on naval shipbuilding, which, as we've just been discussing, remains such a particular strength in Scotland. So the recent announcement from the Norwegian Government of a £10 billion investment for naval ships to be built in the Clyde was of course welcomed by the First Minister and those across the Chamber today. And I'd also add my comments and support to Paul Sweeney's thanks to the Norwegian Government for placing that order with the Clyde, and certainly support that sentiment as well. Because these contracts will see significant investments in the yard and opportunities for people in the area, and a significant boost to employment in the defence sector in Scotland. It also shows, as Alistair Allen and others have said, that this is a vote of confidence in the workforce in particular, and I will take an intervention at that point.
Stephen Kerr.
It's quite right, of course, to give thanks to the Norwegian Government for this extraordinary vote of confidence in Scotland's shipbuilding. But would the Minister also join me in recognising, as I said in my speech, the significant part that the National Shipbuilding Strategy from 2017 from the UK Conservative Government has led to this moment, because at the time it was pretty much derided by his members of Parliament in Westminster?
Minister.
Clearly, I'm surrounded by political parties in the Chamber today that want to take credit for what's happening, so I will just focus on paying tribute to the workforce at the yard. And as I said before, and as others have said, this shows that our shipyards are globally competitive in what is a global industry. And I think it's important to make that point. And we do continue to work with the UK Government to ensure that Scotland benefits from the increased defence spending included in the planned defence growth deals. I should say that recently, in my role as Business Minister, I joined the former Secretary of State for Scotland, Ian Murray, just a few months ago, here in Edinburgh, I think it was about 2 or 3 months ago, to meet the business organisations in Scotland. And one of the themes we discussed there was the massive potential for Scotland's supply chains. That was clearly prior to this particular announcement we're discussing today, but in terms of the forthcoming increase in defence expenditure, and to make sure that our very, very well-equipped supply chains in Scotland benefit greatly from these contracts.
Paul Sweeney.
The Minister makes a very important point about the supply chain. Around 80% of the value of these ships is bought into the shipyard through the supply chain, and maximising that content is key. So would the Minister maybe outline what Scottish Enterprise and the Enterprise Agency could do, and the Scottish Investment Bank could do, to try and make sure we get the patient finance in place to support the investments to get more Scottish content into these ships?
Minister.
Well, as I said, there's a lot of discussion going on at the moment to make sure we can capture as much of these contracts for the Scottish supply chain as possible. And that's also part of the UK discussions as well, because one of the themes raised by the business community in Scotland is we need clear visibility and timelines in terms of what's coming down the pipeline, so that they can take advantage of that in the supply chains in Scotland. So that was highlighted, and that's something we're very keen to see in discussing with UK colleagues as well. So clearly we do have a growing supply chain in Scotland that can take advantage of this, supporting advanced manufacturing and high-tech jobs, and they'll all be part of those discussions. And in terms of what we're doing, we'll do whatever we can do to continue to support commercial shipbuilding also, as well as attracting naval contracts that we hope to see coming to Scotland as well. Our action in taking Ferguson's into public ownership saved the last commercial shipyard on the Clyde. So I think that's evidence of our commitment, and it rescued, as we've rehearsed many times in this chamber, over 300 jobs. We also committed to invest up to £14.2 million, as was mentioned by, I think, Katie Clark, over 2 years in Ferguson Marine, subject to due diligence and commercial standards, and we look forward to hearing further about the proposals from the shipyard in terms of how that money will be invested. We remain firmly committed to supporting Ferguson Marine to also competitively bid for future contracts and securing that long-term future. Briefly, if I've got
Paul
time.
Sweeney.
Does the Minister recognise, however, the shipyards are telling us that to win commercial work, they need that social value weighting, and they also need patient finance, and the Scottish Investment Bank doesn't really offer any shipbuilding finance products that are competitive with other countries? Could we address that fundamental issue?
Minister.
These are all parts of ongoing discussions, but I think the £14.2 million pledge for investment is a clear commitment of that investment coming forward. But I should also say that we're engaging with the UK Government on the next steps of its industrial strategy and its planned review of the National Shipbuilding Strategy to emphasise Scotland's strengths in shipbuilding and marine technology. We're also engaging with the UK Government's National Shipbuilding Office to maximise support for the Scottish commercial shipbuilding sector. As we know, access to skilled labour is a challenge for shipbuilding companies, particularly in fabrication and welding. So we've invested up to £2 million to develop engineering skills in Glasgow under an initiative designed by the Clyde Maritime Cluster in partnership with Skills Development Scotland. And of course, Scottish Enterprise has recently provided more than £9 million to BAE Systems to support a training skills academy there as well. And we've been working with the Clyde Maritime Group on future workforce planning as well. So there's a huge amount of activity underway to address the skills pipeline as well, to make sure we can take advantage of all this potential we're discussing today. As members will be aware, we're undertaking a major reform of the skills system to ensure that it meets Scotland's needs, and ministers, of course, continue to engage with all these industries, including shipbuilding and defence sector, that are looking forward to that reform taking place. Indeed, a recent report drafted and commissioned by the group that I mentioned, from Defence and Marine expert Hans Pung, or the RAN Group, and project managed by Skills Development Scotland, makes a number of workforce planning measures for the regional cluster on the Clyde that are aligned to the recommendations of the UK Government Group Shipbuilding Task Force. And the National Manufacturing Institute of Scotland, together with industry partners and Innovate UK's Workforce Foresighting Hub, have developed a report which highlights the need for updated training to equip the workforce with the skills required as the industry evolves and adapts new technologies going forward as well. The report recommends actions for the shipbuilding industry to effectively prepare for the workforce needs of the future. So clearly that will be a key focus for the sector and partners moving forward as well. In all the support we can and do provide for our shipbuilding sector in Scotland, we also must be cognizant of the fact that shipbuilding is a competitive global market, and any direct award of a public contract must comply with procurement rules and be capable of withstanding legal challenge. I would gently just say to the Chamber, we have a focus of the debate today about Norwegian investment into Scottish shipyards. So that is evidence that this is a global, international, competitive industry.
Briefly, because the Minister will be concluding. Paul Sweeney.
Would the Minister consider investigating further use of Section 45 of the Subsidy Control Act? Because we've seen 2 incidents now of the Russians sabotaging undersea cables to the Northern Isles. In the Northern Isles ferry case, there's a very strong rationale for that to be a national security implication indirectly awarded, or at least be a UK-only competition. Could you look at that potential case?
Minister, and please start to conclude.
Well, as the First Minister had just indicated, the First Minister's questions actually in relation to some of these themes. We are very sympathetic to doing what we can, and we're looking at these issues very closely in terms of procurement going forward. But we have to do within the legal constraints of the public subsidy control legislation, and we continue also to discuss with the UK Government and engage with that National Shipbuilding Office on proposed procurement exercises as well. So I realise I'm running out of time, Deputy Presiding Officer. I just want to say that I think we're all in the same place here, and that is we want to support Scottish shipbuilding going forward. We are on the cusp of an exciting new chapter for shipbuilding in Scotland, and we want to maximise the advantages from that and make sure we secure as much economic benefit from that as well, so that we're not just talking about the contracts we're talking about today, but in the years ahead we're talking about many more contracts coming to Scottish shipyards. And I'm sure if we collaborate and work closely together on that, we can achieve that for Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I suspend this meeting until 2 p.m. Thank you.